Hey everyone, today I'm back with an update on the 15 ampere battery pack. There's some changes that I would like to address. But first, let's go into the first question that a lot of people asked. How much does this thing actually weigh? Well, 1 kilo 345 grams. Let's now compare it to the 9 ampere one that I made that also has 15 cells but 18650s. This is 938 grams. And then the official one from Parkside themselves, the 4 ampere one, that weighs 720 grams. There was a little weight comparison. The next point was also a valid one, that it's very important to measure the voltages before you put all the cells together in the pack to see if they're matched. I did that, but I forgot to film it. So there we go. And the next one is probably the most important one of them all. That is that in between the series of cells, it's very important to put extra strips of nickel because that's where most of the current flows. Let's upgrade the pack so that it's definitely able to handle all the current it needs to be able to put out. As you can see here, I am putting extra strips in between the series connections. So it's advised to also do this throughout all the series connections from your battery. Here I'm putting the third and last layer on top of it. Now this should be plenty thick to deliver all the current that the power tools ask from the battery. After I did that, for good measures, I added another strip on top of the positive and negative side of the battery, so that this connection also definitely will be able to deliver all the power it needs to, without heating up. I'm literally putting it on top of the other strips and connecting it with a little bit of solder. So now we have 4 strips combined on the positive and the negative, and that's definitely enough to deliver all the power the battery needs to. Someone else also pointed out that since the battery is now able to deliver way more power than the stock battery was meant to be able to deliver, the fuses from Parkside themselves really easily burn out. I thought it was a good idea to reinforce the original fuse with a little car fuse, as you can see here. So what I'm doing here is first of all protecting the board with some tape, and then putting some solder on to the original fuse, and next up I just connect the legs of the connectors that I just prepared. And there we go, I just put an extra 30 amps fuse on top of the original. And soldering the fuse straight to the board isn't possible because solder doesn't stick to these car fuses. And with all of these changes done, the battery should be really 100% ready for action. Let's put it back together and start using it. I will definitely make a video comparing it to the original Parkside batteries to see how the performance is compared to that and if it doesn't heat up. Anyway, I will put it through a couple of tests. And now for some bonus footage, considering you saw the previous video, you saw me using my car battery to use the spot welder. To that I say no more, because I made my own 12-volt battery out of very old and bad 18650 cells. The first thing I'm doing is measuring how much the short circuit current is that they are able to deliver. And then I've put them in groups so that the capacity and the amps that they are able to deliver are matching up as good as possible. I first started with little packs, but then quickly decided that it would be a better idea to make the packs a little bit bigger, so now the pack can in total deliver around 500 amps of power for the spot welder. I also matched all the voltages of the cells as good as possible before I connected all of them. Here I'm removing all the spot welds that are still left on the batteries, so that the surface is super smooth to nicely solder on it later on. And I know soldering isn't really advised for these batteries, but I've done it in the past so many times already, and if you keep the heat on it as brief as possible, I've never had any problems with them. And also, they're such bad and old cells anyway, I don't really care that much. And if I had to do this with nickel strips, I would have to put so many layers on top of each other that it would just be too much work. So I'm just using some copper out of old wires that a friend of mine stripped out of an old building. I did one last check to see if the voltages are close enough, and then I soldered everything together. And in the end I added one extra thicker copper wire to the series connection so that it's definitely strong enough to deliver the amperage that it needs to. The next thing I did is to the positive and the negative side of the battery, I connected a couple of wires together so that they form a thicker gauge wire. And there we have it, the completed battery pack that should be able to deliver around 500-550 amps. And I know there's better alternatives like LiPo cells that are really made to deliver this high power, since there's so many cells together and the spot welder only uses them for such brief moment. After an hour of using them, they're not even heated up like the slightest bit. So I feel pretty confident that the cells are happy. And I finally found a use for all these old 18650s with super bad capacities that were piling up and I didn't find a use for. So now they're finally back in use, back in business, and I don't need to buy myself another car battery for the spot welder. I'm quite happy. And as you see, the welds turn out great. Thanks again for watching, and I hope I see you in the next one. Bye bye!